This is a perfectly cooked steak. And it should be. I just cooked it in a commercial kitchen with the best equipment that money can buy. But here's the thing, you don't need any of that crap. With a little bit of science, I'm gonna engineer the exact same steak, edge to edge pink, perfect crust, and no gray banding on a $20 Amazon grill. And it's gonna be macro friendly because every other cooking video I've seen, all they do is just cover the steak in butter. No shit, it tastes good. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to as well. Right after I go over some of the common myths that people have when it comes to cooking a steak. For example, I'm sure you've heard when you sear a steak at a really high temp, it seals in the juices. Turns out, that's complete bullshit. Or that inevitable gray band that shows up every time you grill a steak. Actually, that's just a sign that you suck. And a third of your steak has been overcooked to the point that it denatured, and that's completely avoidable. And the secret to the entire process comes down to two proteins: Myosin and Actin. And yes, those are the same proteins involved in the sliding filament theory inside the sarcomeres, which you're trying to add more of in parallel, i.e. hypertrophy. So technically, you could cook a person better, but don't. Eee. I got dark. And if you're thinking this is a random video for a fitness channel, just know that my dad never taught me how to grill. So if there's some kid watching this that doesn't have a dad, maybe this will be helpful. Also, don't get all sappy on me. My dad taught me a ton of useful skills like how to drink and drive, so it all works out. Have you ever wondered what the doneness of a steak actually is? What happens as you cook it? No, just me, huh? Either way, it'll change the way you look at a well-done steak forever. The first thing you need to understand is that the red juice that you see dripping from a rare steak and the pink complexion of the steak itself has nothing to do with blood. It is not blood, it's actually myoglobin, the protein that binds to oxygen in the muscle. And its color acts like a mood ring for what's going on with the iron inside of it. And since we're all dorks, I think the easiest way to remember this is to turn it into the Zelda Triforce. No oxygen is deoxymyoglobin. It's what you see when you cut in the center of a rare steak or those vacuum sealed ground beef packages you see at the store. And I bet you thought it looked like this because you bought it at Walmart, and who knows what they do to their cows? It's actually because the vacuum seal removes the oxygen, and the low oxygen environment slows spoilage bacteria that need oxygen to grow. That's why they do it. Although I'm sure Walmart does some messed up shit. That's not why it's purple. When you add oxygen, if we crack this package open and wait a minute, you get oxymyoglobin, which blooms to a bright red. And that dull brown color that you see if you leave a steak in the fridge too long, that's just older oxidized myoglobin. And here's the fun part, that entire process is reversible. That brown can technically go back to being red. And I can't overstate how easy it is to manipulate this. I literally just vacuum sealed it and left it in the fridge for 48 hours so the NADH dependent reducing systems can convert the metmyoglobin back to deoxymyoglobin. We're back to fucking purple. Reintroduce some oxygen, give it a second, and it will be red oxymyoglobin in no time. I thought for sure it was gonna smell like all the dicks. Not bad. Not that you'd want to, just go buy another steak. Should give you insight though to the potential fuckery. And the more you look into it, you find out that over half of the case-ready meats, the stuff they package before they send to the store, has some sort of atmospheric manipulation. They're usually packaged with 70-80% O2 mixed with 20 to 30% carbon dioxide. And I still don't know how I feel about that. Part of me understands the difficulty of distribution and appreciates the science because those gases are benign, so oh well, but also, why do you have to fuck with my meat? If that does bother you, just buy from local farms or go to a real butcher. Whether you really care about all that fuckery or not, they're really just playing games with the color of the raw meat. And all of those tricks end the moment that your meat hits the heat. Why in the fuck did I rhyme that? Once you cook it, the iron oxidizes for good and the brown is permanent. And that's the point. The changes in pigment are only overlapping the real changes. And to figure out how to manipulate that, we need to understand what happens to the structural proteins, collagen, and fat as you cook it. The different cuts of steak are really just anatomy with some marketing language sprinkled on top. All else being equal, the ceiling for how tender, juicy, and forgiving a steak is set before it even hits the pan by which muscle it came from and the mechanical job that muscle was built to perform. Take this ribeye. The eye is mainly the longissimus thoracis with the spinalis making up the rib end cap, and these are axial back muscles involved in stabilizing and extending the spine. And I smushed this like a little special. This sirloin, on the other hand, is mostly glute med, which is obviously involved in a lot of movement. And these aren't just from different locations, they're built differently. They have different sized muscle fibers and fascicles, different amounts and arrangements of connective tissue, and different tendencies to develop marbling while the animal is still alive. Marbling is intramuscular fat, fat deposited within the muscle, mostly in the paramecium, which is the spaces between the bundles of muscle fibers, which is different from intermuscular fat, which is the seams of fat that separate one muscle from another. Do you see the grain on the sirloin when you compare them next to each other? those are the fascicles. Now, a grainy appearance doesn't mean that the cow had overly muscular glutes because all muscles have fascicles, but it is an indication and a clue that you're about to chew through some really tough shit. Moral of the story, make sure you start with a good cut of beef because no matter how perfectly you cook that sirloin, it's not going to be anywhere as good as this ribeye. I mean, I could cook this thing on the and it would still taste better. One thing I didn't think about until I started researching for this video is that the USDA grades the quality of beef based upon the marbling, the intramuscular fat, as well as carcass maturity, which that's weird. Of the 3 grades, you'll primarily see them sold as Select, which is the lowest, Choice, and then Prime. Here's the catch. While the grade is printed on the label, the nutrition values are pulled from a generic database, not from the actual steak that you're holding, which means 2 ribeyes that are the same weight could contain substantially different levels of calories, fat, and even protein. So that sucks. But it should have been common sense because more fat obviously means less lean tissue. Using the USDA's Food Data Central as an illustration, a 12-ounce Select ribeye is roughly 710 calories and 68 grams of protein. A Prime, which this is not 12 ounces, just it's to prove a point, could be over 1,100 calories and 10 grams less of protein. So just something to keep in mind if you're OCD and tracking calories. Tricky bastards. As you begin cooking and the internal temperature starts to rise, the first molecular change you're going to notice is the myosin start to denature. Yeah, that myosin, the scissor sister of actin. And it starts at roughly 104 degrees because it's not just one protein, there are several parts. I'm sure you've seen a drawing of myosin working before. It looks like a nutsack dragging across the floor. It's just the myosin head. It and its constituent parts don't all unfold at once. They give way at various temperatures. It's the reason that the change is gradual and not instant. Now, a lot of people will say that steak is about preference, and if you like eating something that tastes like a shoe, there's actually some evidence to support it, because no matter how you cook it, digestibility is around 95%. They've even seen in older adults a well-done steak actually gets absorbed better than a medium rare steak. So by all means, eat that shoe. But as temperature climbs, moisture loss climbs with it. And by the time that actin denatures, it falls off a cliff. Actin, on the other hand, is a little bit more heat resistant based upon how densely packed that twisting double helical filament is. At 130 degrees, barely any moisture is lost. By the time you get to 150, it's triple the amount. So obviously we want to stop before we hit that cliff. That puts the bullseye right at 130. That's not opinion or preference. That is just where everything lines up. And that's the exact point where the myoglobin gives you that nice rosy pink color. There's a reason when you ask a chef how they recommend a steak, it's always right there. Myosin set before actin, it's delicious fucking science. But here's the tricky part. That perfect temp is obviously the internal temperature. So when you cook it on a pan or a grill like this, you're working against a temperature gradient, meaning that even if I cook this perfectly and factor in the carryover effect, the fact that the temperature will continue to rise 5 to 10 degrees after you pull the steak, and we let it rest before cutting into it. Also, side note, don't let anybody tell you that the reason you let it rest is because the juices get reabsorbed. That's bullshit. It's just a simple fact that the internal pressure goes down as the temperature does. What you'll notice is that gray band surrounding the outer part of the steak, that's the myoglobin being cooked to the point it's turned into a new compound. And that's also a sign that the actin has denatured as well, meaning that we have just made a third of our steak taste like shit to enjoy the other 2/3. Fuck. But doesn't starting out cooking at a really high heat seal in the juices? No, that's just another bullshit myth that your drunk uncle gave you. Thanks, Steve. Piece of shit. As you probably realized by this point, juiciness is largely controlled by how heat denatures and contacts the meat proteins and how much water is expelled in the process. Where's Kate when you need her? I need a water demonstration. But there is another way, and it's called the reverse sear. It's glorious. Once I learned and perfected this, I will never cook a steak another way again. Why didn't nobody tell me this? I would like to learn stuff. This is just more proof I come from a long line of trash. The idea is you slowly bring your steak close to the desired finished temp, pull it 10 to 15 degrees before that, and then sear it. Here's an example of which you probably never heard of before. Sous vide. The concept is you season your meat, vacuum seal it, and then cook it in what looks like a mini jacuzzi for about an hour and a half. The fascinating part is you can't overcook meat this way. I mean, technically, if you left it in there for hours, you'd run into proteolysis, so don't do that. But the idea is you get the perfectly cooked meat at whatever temperature you like all the way through. Obviously, I don't expect anybody to go out and buy this setup. I just want you to understand the concept because we're going to take it and bring it to to your oven. The way you do that is by setting the temperature to 200 degrees, use grill racks to keep the steak as dry as possible, and a cheap Amazon thermometer. That way you can pull the steak 10 degrees before your desired temperature and sear it. Have you ever wondered why restaurant steaks always taste phenomenal? It's because they're always the perfect temperature. And they can tell just by touching the steak. The literal general rule of thumb is you put your first finger and thumb together, that's medium rare, middle finger and thumb, medium, medium well, and disgusting well. Unless you're a diabeto and you have really fat hands, or you're a mongoloid like myself and have a really thick, thinner eminence, it's not gonna work really well. The only way you should ever judge doneness is by temperature. It changes the architecture of the steak. The muscle, collagen, and fat, all of those undergo molecular changes at their very own specific temperatures. And we're obviously not professionals, so the only way you should ever judge the temperature of a steak is with a thermometer. One important factor that people often overlook is the proper time at which to salt their steak. The biggest key being to avoid what I would call the dead zone. Within the first few minutes, the chemistry has started, but the surface hasn't had time to get wetter and interfere with the sear. So if you're running low on time and you're just gonna throw it on the grill, make sure you salt it right before. Wait several minutes though, and the salt begins dissolving in the moisture at the surface, creating a concentrated brine, meaning the outside is temporarily wetter, which is bad for browning because the heat has to evaporate the water instead of bringing the surface to searing temperatures. But you give it enough time and the sodium and chloride ions diffuse deeper into the meat and the surface begins to dry out, which I think is neat. With a reverse sear, that low oven temperature gives time for the surface moisture to evaporate away, so I can literally salt it right before. I also use pepper and garlic powder, but just know salt is the only thing that penetrates. Everything else just stays on the surface. The only downside though is you have to have patience. You need to wait before you can eat yourself to death.
Infinity War is about half that. The excitement for Spider-Man is ramping up.
Once we pull it, all we need to do is pat it dry, and then we're ready to sear. Speaking of searing, for me, there's one clear choice: cast iron. Not because it's special or even a good conductor of heat, because it's not. Copper and aluminum are clearly better, it's just that it's heavy as hell. So all that mass is better at storing heat, which means it's easier to keep the temperature stable. Regardless, there's still gonna be a difference in temperature between the center and the outsides of the pan. So the best way I found to combat that is by slowly bringing up to the temperature that you want. What temperature should that be? At temperatures above 285 degrees, the Maillard reaction takes place, where amino acids and reducing sugars react. And I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but yes, your steak does have glycogen and ATP that break down into reducing sugars, glucose, and ribose. So we know we need to be above 285, but how much? And now we're getting into preference, but for me, I found the sweet spot is if I aim at 425 degrees, which also means we're gonna need to use a little tiny chode amount of oil with the smoke point that's above that. Again, we're not using a lot. I basically wipe up all of it, so there really is no measurable increase in calories. The reason you're gonna want at least some is because on a microscopic level, the steak and the pan have peaks and valleys, which create gaps full of air, which conducts heat very poorly. That thin layer of fat is gonna help fill in those gaps. I started out using ghee because it's got a high smoke point of around 485 degrees, but I noticed there was some whiskey white smoke, meaning that there's still residual milk solids in there. Not great. I ended up switching over to an algae oil, which has a higher smoke point, more monounsaturated fat, and it just has a nice buttery taste. I also highly recommend getting an infrared thermometer like this, otherwise you're flying blind. Oh, my balls are actually hot. The last myth we should probably cover is that some people say only flip your steak one time, but there's no evidence to back that up. In fact, flipping it more frequently will reduce that gray band, so anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds is best. And there is no real reason I use this fish spatula, I just like it. And I told you at the beginning, I'd show you how to do this even on a shitty $20 Amazon grill, and I'm sure at this point you could probably guess the process. Keep the temperature low inside the grill, slowly bring up the steak to the doneness temperature that you want, remove it, increase the heat, sear, perfect. So if we compare the one I cooked on the grill like an asshole to the one cooked in a $50,000 commercial oven to the one that I cooked in my own personal oven and the $20 Amazon grill, you can see it has nothing to do with the equipment and it's all about the delicious steak science. I will say though, the one I cooked in my own oven, turned out the best. Moral of the story, you don't need all this fancy equipment to cook the perfect steak. Don't get me wrong, this one, that's good. So good. This one is phenomenal. Make sure you're subscribed or sign up to the email list linked in the description, because the next video is where I drop the new program. And I know it took forever. That's because it's the best one I've ever made. You can do it as a bro split or a PPL. There's new exercises and it's hard as hell, but in a beautiful, sadistic, self-mutilating kind of way.